Hello and welcome. I'm Asuma Katauka and you are watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top stories. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz has announced that Germany will hold the export of military equipment to Israel that could be used in its full-scale operation in Gaza. This comes as a response to Israel's plan for a full-scale military takeover. Merz has said the move reflects Germany's deep concerns over the humanitarian impact and escalating violence in the Gaza Strip. Hamas has called Israel's plan to seize Gaza City a new war crime, warning that the operation will cost it dearly. UN Human Rights Chief Volker Turk and Finnish Foreign Minister Elina Valtonen also slammed the plan, saying it violates international law and threatened Palestinians' right to self-determination. Malaysia will lead an ASEAN delegation to Myanmar next month following the junta's lifting of its state of emergency. According to Malaysian Foreign Minister Muhammad Hassan, the mission aims to reinvigorate regional diplomatic efforts to address Myanmar's escalating conflict and humanitarian crisis. President Xi Jinping has told Russian President Vladimir Putin that China welcomes renewed US-Russia talks, according to Chinese state media. President Trump, who is pushing for an end to the Ukraine-Russia conflict, has indicated a future meeting with President Putin could happen without prior talks with Ukrainian President Zelensky, with the UAE being considered as a venue. China's foreign ministry has publicly supported India over a steep U.S. tariff increase over New Delhi's continued purchase of Russian oil. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Guo says China's opposition to abuse of tariffs is consistent and clear. The U.S. has raised its reward for information leading to Venezuelan President Maduro's arrest to $50 million amid renewed drug trafficking and cartel allegations. The move reflects heightened enforcement and follows prior incremental increases earlier this year. Meanwhile, in response to steep 50% U.S. tariffs on Indian and Brazilian goods, Prime Minister Modi and Brazil's President Lula da Silva has held a phone call reaffirming their strategic partnership. Lula confirmed the state visit to India in early 2026 amid talks to expand trade, tech, and energy ties. President Trump has signed a memorandum requiring colleges and universities to submit detailed admissions data, including race, GPA, and test scores, to confirm compliance with the Supreme Court's affirmative action ruling. Institutions may face federal aid penalties for non-compliance. U.S. Ambassador to Israel Mike Huckabee says Washington respects Israel's right to defend itself and determine its own policies, but is deeply concerned about the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Speaking to Reuters in Jerusalem, Huckabee said the following.
The position of the president has been that he respects that Israel has a right to defend itself. It has a right to determine how it does that. Certainly we're a partner with Israel. We care very much about the way things go forward, but it's never been the role of the U.S. to dictate Israel's policy any more than it would be the policy of Israel to dictate.
His remarks came as Israel's security cabinet approved plans to take control of Gaza City. Meanwhile, owing to this development, Belgium has summoned Israel's ambassador, expressing what it calls total disapproval of the decision and of continued settlement expansion. Now for this discussion, we are joined by Mati Zweig. He's a geopolitical expert, joins us live from Israel. Thank you, Mati, for joining us today. Good to see you. Now, given the U.S.'s position respecting Israel's right to defend itself while also expressing concerns over the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, how do you see the balance from U.S. between support for Israel's security and addressing the growing humanitarian crisis?
Well, thank you for having me again. I think this is a process that is continuing every day at the same level. I mean, from the one side, Hamas has repeatedly opposed to any kind of agreement to release the hostages and put an end on this war. From the other side, they are giving all the arguments to the extremists inside the Israeli government that say if they don't want to do anything of these things, that let's control all the Gaza Strip, even if it's going, we have to deepen our attacks, if we have to go all through the Gaza Strip and take over all of it, and then we will take over and we will take control completely. And the question and what divides the Israeli public inside Israel is that what are the goals? Because you can send the military to take over all of Gaza, and of course there are going to be more casualties and more soldiers falling, which is really, really a disaster for us. Anyway, you can do it militarily, but the question is, what is tomorrow? Civil administration over all the population, as in Judea and Samaria, trying to get by force all the hostages outside, which probably will take at least the life of most of the hostages that they are now kept alive. This is the big issue that is dividing the Israeli society between the people that understand what is going on now and what can be if they are really going to take over the control over Gaza. Huckabee said they will back up Israeli efforts because they understood that Hamas, doesn't matter what you offer them, they're always going to say no because they don't want to lose their strengths and the possibility of being the power in Gaza. They don't understand that this game is over. It's over for everybody. It's over also even for the powers that say you have to take care of all the food and the deployment there, and to go to the to all the perimeter around Gaza. They even understand that this is not going to happen now because Hamas continue to refuse, and having yet, I suppose, directions from Iran and maybe from their friends in Qatar that they say, don't give up, we are going to help you. And that's what is going on. Every time they listen from Europeans that they want to give a Palestinian state, they say, oh, we got a prize here. We don't have to free the hostages. We just have to continue in our line. And this is a deadlock, and this is going to lead to a complete control of Israeli all over Gaza and more suffering for both sides. That's what's happening now, with the help or not with the help from the world.
And Maddie, now, do you think this tension could lead to a shift in U.S.'s policy towards Israel, especially in regard to future military actions?
Well, we are seeing that a big amount of pressure is going on Israel, but not only on the diplomatic level and not only on the military level. Countries that they are refusing to have cooperation militarily with Israel, cultural cooperation, academic cooperation. This is a disaster for Israel, and now we are in a position that we don't have any alternative. I mean, or to take control over or to get an agreement. Agreement is not coming. People in Israel is half and half suspicious that even the Israeli government doesn't want really to finish this, because this is going to make them say to the people, look, they don't want, we have to control all over Gaza. And then the extremists say, okay, if we are going to control Gaza, let's also control all the civil administration and maybe even do new settlements. This is not going to happen, but they are talking about that. And all the world is saying, look, you have a lot of extremists, look what is going on. And they don't look what's happening with Hamas. Until really it will be a big, big pressure from all the world, including Europe, including the United States, against Hamas, this is not going to change. In the same way that the world understood, and even in the 12 days war with Iran, they said Iran don't have the right to have nuclear capabilities because it's not a regime that you can trust, not only against Israel, against Europe or the world. The same way you cannot trust Hamas to stay in power in Gaza. this game is over. And instead of saying we have a plan, they have to go out from Gaza. They have to put a multinational force, maybe the Emirates, with Oman, with Saudi Arabia, with the Americans, someone responsible to take over Gaza, and even with moderate elements from the Palestinian Authority, maybe not now, maybe in the future. But nobody's really talking about that, and this is just make this situation continue and continue with no clear end and with a very bad outcome for both sides.
Thank you, Maddie, for sharing that. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion. Leaders in Syria's Kurdish administered northeast have criticized the Damascus government during a meeting in Hasakeh, urging a decentralized federal system and rejecting political marginalization. The talks come as Kurdish authorities negotiate the integration of their institutions into the state under a March 2025 pact. Kurdish demands for autonomy date back decades, with successive governments accused of suppressing their identity. During the civil war, Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces gained control of much of the northeast, but recent clashes in Aleppo have strained the integration deal. Participants stressed the need for stability and inclusivity, warning that continued unrest could further destabilize the region. Let's listen into few comments made at the meeting.
في إقامة نظام حكم ديمقراطي لا مركزي أو فيدرالي يستند إلى دستور توافقي يضمن توزيعا عادلا ويراعي الخصوصيات الدينية والقومية والاجتماعية والثقافية لكل مكون.
نحن أبناء الطائفة المتوحدين كنيس نقف إلى جانب إخوتنا من الكرد والعرب والسوريين والأزيديين والتركمان والشرقس وباقي المكونات لنؤكد أن التنوع ليس تأكيدا بل هو كنز يعزز وحدتنا.
من هذا الكونفرنس، من هذا التجمع، أن نكون كلنا سوريين يدا بيد، لا للتهميش لا للعدوانية، كلنا سوريين نطالب في استقرار في المنطقة.
Now we go back to our guest discussion with Maddie Zweig. Thank you, Maddie, for staying with us. Now, can a peaceful resolution to Kurdish demands be achieved without risking further destabilization in the region?
Well, this is something that has been going on since the Assad fall and the Al-Julani took over the new government. And the question is that we have here a big question that this is the good example and the bad example. Because in this moment, who is complaining? The Turkish. The Turkish are complaining that the Kurdish are taking a bad example from the way that Israel is defending in the south the Druze. And when they saw this, they feel more confident in defending themselves with the attacks from the north, from Turkey, and from the center to the northeastern part of Syria, from the central government of Al-Julani. The big problems here is that the powers like United States, Trump is backing up the central government of Al-Julani, also Turkey, because for him, it's a tool to stabilize Syria in a way that they are not going back to the situation before, which was Iranian and Russian influence inside Syria. Okay, the Kurdish are not with Russian or with Iranian, but from the other side, they don't want to be attacked in the north from the Turkish and from the center, from the central government of Al-Julani. And the big problem here is that the jihadists, because anyway, Al-Julani was a jihadist and his guys, the people that is with him, they have a background as jihadists from Al-Qaeda style, ISIS style, and they have always the wrong message. They think that if Trump say, let's unite Syria under you, it's a carte blanche also to attack weak minorities or to put all the minorities under the rules, if it's the Kurdish in the northern eastern part. if it's the Alawites in the northern west part, if it's the Druze in the south part. And if until he is not changing the chip in his mind about having a kind of federalist Syria, a Syria that is united, even with a big influence of his faction, but anyway, as a united Syria, nothing good is going to come. And the big question now also is how much the United States is going to press Turkey to be more moderate and don't let the central government in Syria to continue attacking the SDF, or it means the forces of the Kurdish. And I said in the past, if this situation is going to continue with the Druze, with the Kurdish, with the Alawite, and with the Christians also, and then it's going to be, again, a civil war that is not in the interest of anyone. So, again, the big powers, United States.
Maddie, thank you for sharing that. We have a breaking news. We'll come back to you for this. Please stay with us. In some breaking news coming in from Europe, European Council President António Costa has said a two-state solution remains the only sustainable long-term path to peace in the Middle East. In a series of statements, Costa warned that Israel's decision to take over Gaza City violates the July 19th agreement with the EU, undermines international law, and goes against universal values. He said such a move must have consequences for EU-Israel relations, to be assessed by the Council. Costa strongly urged the Israeli government to reconsider its plan, warning that it risks further undermining prospects for peace. Now we go back to our guest discussion with Matti Zweig. He's a geopolitical expert, joins us live from Israel. Thank you, Matti, for staying with us. Now, what's your reaction towards this incoming news?
This is no news. I mean, in all the time and continuously, everyone is going back and back to this mantra like reality didn't change. It doesn't matter if I agree to a two-state solution. The reality is that the Palestinians have split themselves between one side, where is the AP, Judea and Samaria, on the West Bank, and Gaza. And they say they must unite, and they say they must help each other. They never help each other. They never unite, and they always try to attack and destroy Israel. Israel has been vehemently counterattacking in Gaza, has vehemently taken many hundreds, thousands of actions in Judea and Samaria that has been much more successful to overcome terrorist attacks. So you don't listen about this, but the two-state solution need a partner, need two partners, one from the Israeli side and one from the Palestinian side. The world should ask the Palestinian side to say, I want two-state solution. I want peace, and I will live in the as a legitimate neighbor of the legitimate state of Israel. I think they don't say that. Israel thinks that they're only going to prepare themselves for the next war and for the next attack against Israel. And as usual, the extremists, they touch each other, and the outcome is that nothing is moving and people are talking empty words.
Maddie, thank you very much for joining us. We are running out of time for this discussion, but thank you very much for staying with us throughout our news. Now we move on to our next news. The White House has now officially declared that US President Donald Trump will host the leaders of Armenia and Azerbaijan at the White House on Friday for what he calls a historic peace summit. Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev and Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan are set to sign a peace agreement aimed at ending decades of conflict over Nagorno-Karabakh, a dispute that has claimed thousands of lives since the late 1980s. The deal follows months of intensified U.S. diplomacy, including a visit by Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff to the region. U.S. officials say the agreement includes a major breakthrough: the creation of a new transit link called the Trump Route for International Peace and Prosperity, connecting Azerbaijan to its Nakhchivan region through Armenian territory. The corridor is expected to include rail, energy pipelines, and fiber optic lines. The White House says Trump will also sign agreements with both nations covering energy, technology, economic cooperation, border security, infrastructure, and trade to boost stability and prosperity across the South Caucasus. Now we're joined by Mark Sutherland. He's a geopolitical analyst, joins us live from London. Thank you, Mark, for joining us today. Good to see you. Now, do you think...
Good to see you, Sima.
Thank you. Now, do you think the creation of such a corridor, the long Trump name one, will this be enough to bring lasting peace in the region with tensions between Armenia and Azerbaijan going back to history?
As you pointed out, I mean, these tensions have been going on since the fall of the Soviet Union, since the wall came down in 1989, but actually just before that. So the tension has always been about over the land, that disputed territory of Nagorno-Karabakh. And there was a war that ended in 1994. There was another war in 2020. Armenia had that region under their control in that long war that ended in 1994, and then again then having that in 2020. But by 2023, the Azerbaijan then fully took control of that region, and then very sadly about 100,000, as it's estimated, refugees were then on the move. This is any signing of any deal to end any conflict sincerely is always a very, very positive move. We always hope for that. But as you pointed out, it's historic. The historic links there of the tensions that go back many, many years. We always have to bear that in mind as well. But also the fact that the president is using the economic levers yet again. And I think the long view of President Trump, as he knows, his main threat, the main threat to the United States is China. So he is wanting constantly, in my opinion, is to then build relationships with other countries in the best way he could to actually thwart that. In regard to this route, where they can go to the enclave there. It's very important that is kept open. So those links then are positive. But as we always say, suddenly something could explode. But there are, I think, some very positive things happening in that region, particularly with Azerbaijan. But there is a long history of tension. And it takes a lot of courage for both sides to forgive, come to the table, and want to take things forward in a very, very positive way. So this is a good thing that I believe that is actually happening here, Azuma.
Yes, maybe a step towards peace in that region. Thank you, Mark, for sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now, Pakistan's military says it has foiled a major infiltration attempt by terrorists from Afghanistan, killing at least 33 of them in Balochistan's Zob district. The army claims the fighters belong to what it calls Indian-sponsored Fitna al-Khawarij, a term it uses for the banned Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan. India, on the other hand, has always denied such accusations and have provided evidences against such comments. The military says troops detected the group overnight and engaged them in what it described as a precise and bold operation. A large cache of weapons and explosives was recovered, and a sanitization operation is underway. Islamabad has long accused Kabul of allowing TTP terrorists to launch attacks inside of Pakistan before retreating across the border, charges Afghanistan denies. Now we go back to our guest discussion with Mark Sutherland. He's a geopolitical analyst, joins us live from London. Thank you, Mark, for staying with us. Now, given Pakistan's claim that these terrorists were Indian-sponsored, and then earlier claims this year made by India that Pahalgam attack was Pakistan-sponsored, how do you assess the potential geopolitical implications of these tit-and-tat accusations between India and Pakistan?
Well, that region of Balochistan, the reason why this is happening is that from the Taliban, the name that you gave them, derivative within that area, would like to see a separate entity within Pakistan. And of course, as the Taliban then came back in full force in 2021, this has impacted that area. I mean, I understand if we go through various reports that in April this year, there was another 48 militants that the Pakistan government then took out. There, as you pointed out, there's a lot of accusations. They will then accuse the Indian government. They will then go back to the Afghanistan and just say, you know, they accuse them of doing this. Again, it's a lot of historic movement there, Asuma, as well, and that we need to see peace in that area. It's a very, I believe, very mountainous area. It's not easy, but we need to see that. But it's about then the resistant movement turning around and saying we want our own separate state, which is a word that we very sadly hear, and sometimes for good reasons why we hear in other areas of our world. Asuma.
Thank you very much, Mark Sutherland, for joining us as always and sharing your insight all the way from London. Now we move on to North America. A fast-moving wildfire is tearing through thousands of acres north of Los Angeles, named the Canyon Fire. It ignited on Thursday and has already burned over 4,800 acres with zero containment. Hot, dry winds and extreme heat are fueling the blaze. Nearly 3,000 residents have been evacuated. The fire comes as the West faces multiple out-of-control fires, including California's largest this year, the Gifford Fire. Officials warn conditions could worsen through the weekend. Well, that's all we have time for. We will continue to bring more news updates from around the world.